Namaskar friends, this is NJ, your host on this channel. So friends, in this video we will have our discussion on a topic regarding which I get asked a lot many times on my channel, especially whenever I upload any video connecting Rahu and Ketu. So friends, my last upload on my channel was of this upcoming transit of Rahu and Ketu when on December 5th, Rahu will shift to the Capricorn sign and Ketu will shift to the Cancer sign. Even over there in that topic, while explaining, this topic came of Rahu-Ketu inversion. So a lot many people ask me this question that Nipun, could you like make a make an exclusive video on this topic as well? Although to the best of my knowledge, I did have uploaded a separate video on this, but I just thought I can give a fresh perspective through this video as well. So friends, in this video, I would not say that it has not much to do with the transit, because the typical terminology used by Vedic astrologers in any transit video, when they use this term Rahu Ketu inversion, it is generally used when the transiting Rahu is over your natal Ketu and transiting Ketu over your natal birth Rahu in the chart. But here I'm talking about, this is going to be an explanation of your destiny and your fate. I mean to say, what will happen if the axis of Rahu and Ketu will have a flip in the D9 chart. So like for example, if Rahu is in the first house and Ketu is in the seventh house in the D1 chart, but once you open the D9 chart, like the position has been swapped. So what is going to be the probable outcome? Or even from a spiritual perspective, karmic perspective, philosophical perspective, how could you approach these kind of flips happening between the ascendant D1 chart and the D9 chart? This is what we will try to understand in this video. So friends, before we will start our discussion, you know this thing that first we will invoke the blessings of the gods. So first of all, we will pray to Lord Ganesha, who is the Hindu god of auspiciousness, good omens, and who presides over all the knowledge of mystic sciences known to humankind. So Om Vakratun Mahakaya Suryakoti Samprabha Nirvignam Kurumadeva Sarvakareshu Sarvada. Om Ekdantai Vidmahi Vakratundai Dhimahi Tanno Danti Prachodayat. We will pray to Lord Shiva as well. Any of the concerns connected with Rahu and Ketu, worship of like Lord Shiva is one of the best remedy. So Om Tat Purushaya Vidmahe Mahadevaya Dhimahi Tanno Rudra Prachodayat. We will invoke the blessings of the Rahu Devta as well. Om Shiro Rupaya Vidmahe Amriteshaya Dhimahi Tanno Rahu Prachodayat. And we will invoke the blessing of the Moksha Karak, like the liberation significator Ketu Devata as well. So Om Ashwadhvajaya Vidmahe Shulastaya Dhimahi Tanno Ketu Prachodayat. So now friends, now comes the question about like the foundation of this topic, right? Like the way we could say that the life events and the quality of karma. How could you look at it in this way? So see, I always say this thing that like even whether you are very advanced in your pursuit of this holy divine knowledge or you are just starting up, you have to understand the basic difference. So we generally say this thing that see, for example, if I were to say why this flip is important. So first of all, let's start that. Why the flip is important. So because this is going to be a karmic inversion, which will tell you where the destiny begins and where the soul maturity ends and where life eventually reverses direction. Because friends, if you remember, I also uploaded this video on cosmic U-turn. So because obviously like these days with the economical conditions, many people's job are at the verge of like losing their job. And even in my case, the way my life has transformed from one career to another career, so this has always been my area of interest. And generally in these kind of queries, in these kind of lives, you definitely get to know a lot of the information can be acquired through Rahu Ketu, Nodal Axis. And obviously, like if you want to understand the true intent and intention of these karmic planets, you have to look at them in the D9 chart as well, in the Navamsha chart as well. So the simple basic foundation is that the D1 chart, it shows the life events, the external experiences, personality, ambitions, karma being performed, what we can see and perceive in front of us. But once we open the D9 chart, it tells about the quality of karma, like maturity, inner evolution, spiritual purpose, and the final meaning. So, if I were to package it, look at the D1 chart as the journey and the D9 chart as why the journey even exists. So now friends, now comes the question that you have to first understand the basic traits which Rahu and Ketu represents. So for this discussion, let's not look at them as benefic or malefic. Instead, think of it in psychological lines. For example, Rahu represents the future karma, right? It represents hunger, obsession, expansion, unfamiliar territory, or this could be the worldly evolution. That is the only reason the global fame comes from Rahu. And Ketu represents the past karma, like mastery in anything. Ketu numerology is connected with number 7, which is considered as a number of perfection. So, mastery, detachment, exhaustion, subconscious memory, spiritual residue. So, now imagine that these two changing places between D1 and D9. So, the soul is literally changing its priorities. You can look at it that way. So, now comes the question that what is a nodal flip? I gave you a basic overview of that at the starting. So imagine, like, suppose in the D1 chart, Rahu's in the 10th house, Ketu's in the 4th house, right? But in the D9 chart, Rahu goes in the 4th and Ketu goes in the 10th. Now, for this discussion sake, for a while, don't get confused with the zodiac sign. Here I'm explaining this more in the lines of the house placement. So, so you would have seen that, right? The houses have got exchanged. So, and from the spiritual perspective, this is not just a merely coincidence. It means what the person spends life chasing eventually becomes what they detach from, and what they ignored becomes their true destination. This is a karmic inversion. You know, friends, from like one of the form of faith, religion, like Jainism, over there you will get to know a lot about, like, if you will study about the Jainism and their principles, their teachings, you will get to know a lot about the way they have given emphasis on, like, with the passage of the time, once you reach in your old ripe age, even the process of dying, the way they have explained, like, this reminds me of the life of Chandragupta. So he was one of the most glorious king which India, the Akhand Bharatvarsh, have witnessed. And his story is very inspirational. Like, he was just a common man and he got discovered by his teacher who made him the crown king. And in the last years of his life, he took a spiritual vow that he devoid himself, he deprived himself of food and everything, and that's how slowly, gradually, he left his body. So that's what I'm trying to tell you, that what could be your obsession for a while, or in a phase, in a period of life, could be something which you would be extremely detached from in the second half of the life. And these kind of things generally happen when you have, like, a nodal flip and some other supporting alignments in your chart. So now comes the question, friends, when we talk about the, after knowing about it, so the foundation of this discussion, like, the universal principle says that whenever Rahu and Ketu exchange houses across D1 and D9, the native experiences three distinct life chapters. So the very first phases, the phase one could be that, let's say, for example, if Rahu dominates, so the person aggressively pursues the D1 Rahu house. They believe this is my purpose. Everything revolves around achieving it. Now, what could be the second phase? Now, second phase is when life disappoints them. Like, even after success, they come across that level of emptiness, because Rahu never satisfies. It only magnifies desire. That's what I guess Gautam Buddha also said, that the root cause of suffering is desire. attachment. So that's the phase 2. And what could be the phase 3? Because now the D9 activates and suddenly the Ketu house becomes more meaningful. Life reverses, priorities reverse, relationship reverse, identity reverse, and the beauty is that the soul still remembers. So now comes the question, friends, like why these kind of things happen, right? So we know this thing that Rahu represents unfinished karma, and D1 shows unfinished worldly karma, and D9 shows completed spiritual karma. So that means the house exchange tells us what begins externally ends internally. I guess again, this reminds me of so many historical stories from India and the inspirational characters in the Bharat versus like history. Like this could be the case of the Samrat Ashok as well. Like he was so glorious and he was hard bent on conquering so much of the land. And after one of the war, I guess that was the Kalinga War, he saw so much genocide, massacre that he embraced Buddhism. So from extremities of the violence, bloodshed, to completely abandoning and embracing peace. So now comes the question, friends, when we talk about these kind of examples, right? What could be the examples? So I just took some random examples. Like let's say, for example, if exchange is happening, right? Rahu is in the 10th house and Ketu is in the 4th house. So how could you decode it? I mean to say, in the D1 chart, Rahu is in the 10th, Ketu is in the 4th. And in the D9, the same person has Rahu in the 4th and Ketu in the 10th. So this could tell about that in the early life, native might be very career obsessed and power obsessed. He wants recognition, status, achievements, wants to rise the corporate ladder, politics, public life, all of that important for this native. But later in their life, after achieving everything, they suddenly desire peace, home, meditation, family, retreat, nature. So it means life turns out to be exactly opposite. Their priorities turns out to be exactly opposite, and they become internally detached from the status. So like the real examples could be like the way I mentioned the Samrat Ashok's example. This could be all those modern day CEOs who become the monks. So CEOs becoming monks, or politicians becoming spiritual teachers, successful entrepreneurs disappearing into the farms. So this could be one such example. Now let's take up the second example. For example, if Rahu is in the 7th and Ketu is in the 1st, right? And in the D9 chart, Rahu goes in the 1st and Ketu goes in the 7th. So what does it tell about? This tells about that initially the person desperately seek relationship. Marriage will become this person's sole life purpose, and validation will come from the partners, from other people. But after enough relationship karma, the soul will realize identity matters more. Later in life, the person might be more driven towards self discovery, personal freedom, self development, and spiritual individuality. So, again, friends, see, that's what I always say. Like all those people in whose case the life goes through major U turn, turnaround. So, in those kind of cases, something which has been completely hidden and it suddenly manifested, Rahu and Ketu will definitely have a part over there. See, Saturn works differently. Saturn can give you very institutionalized growth. We all have heard those kind of stories, right? Like a person who joined as a daily wage laborer, and within the same span of life, this person owned many factories, but in the same industry, in the same relevant business. So that is the domain of Saturn. So it can unfold things like this. But when we talk about from doing and pursuing and approaching north and completely conquering south, completely, which something for which you don't have any expertise, you don't have any plan, don't have any cultural ties, and suddenly it manifested. So Rahu Ketu plays very significant role over there. They in itself represent surprise element. How can they turn around someone's life? Now, friends, another example could be, for example, Rahu in the second or Ketu in the eighth house. And in the D9 chart, the same Rahu goes in the eighth and Ketu goes in the second. So this could tell about that in the young age, like native might have good luck with the money, or might be able to accumulate good amount of wealth as well, might have good amount of savings as well, might be inclined towards luxury, possession of things, or this could be someone who would have acquired the family business at a very young age. But later on in life, this person might have strong interest in psychology, occult, Jyotish, mysticism, or life might transform a lot. Native might take heightened interest in research or isolation, healing. So that means that's how life transforms. One more example, friends, like this could be a case that if someone who has Rahu in the fifth house, Ketu in the 11th house, but in the D9 chart, Rahu goes in the 11th and Ketu goes in the fifth. So this tells about that initially, like the obsession might be with creativity, romance, multiple partners, recognition, or very inclined towards or obsessed with having children, or that personal magnetism, desire to be famous, to be talented, recognized, is going to be very high. But later in life, this person might be more driven towards collective work, communities, humanitarian causes, network, teaching, society. So the focus shift from my creativity to our contribution. Now, friends, another example could be this could be, for example, Rahu in the 12th house, Ketu in the 6th house, but in the D9 chart, Rahu goes in the 6th and Ketu goes in the 12th. So, what does it tell about? See, this generally tells about that in the early half, like native might have a chance to travel to many foreign countries. There might have been concern of isolation, escapist tendency, or a lot of the time spent in the ashrams, meditation centers. But later on in the life, this person will be very much driven towards service, healthcare, daily discipline. Person could become extremely competitive, very like routine and rule oriented, might also pursue or follow practical spirituality, and the mystic will become the servant. So now, friends, the question comes over here. The rule which you have to always remember is that the house which Rahu occupies in the D1 is usually where life creates the greatest story. The house Rahu occupies in D9 is usually where life creates the greatest meaning. These are not always identical. That is what I try to understand some of the clients who come for the counseling, for the consultation, that what you are pursuing, the mirage which you are chasing, is the Rahu in the D1 chart. That generally happens in the Rahu Disha. But the real fulfillment for that, at least look at the same Rahu which dispositor in the D9 as well, right? So now comes the question that in these kind of situation, friends, like for example, timing also plays a very important factor. So for example, like when we say timing, so I mean to say the flip you have, like Rahu Ketu flip in the D9 chart, you have that. But the impact of that is generally felt usually during the Rahu Mahadasha, Ketu Mahadasha, or Rahu Antardasha, Ketu Antardasha for sure. Or this could also be during the time of the Rahu return, Rahu Ketu return, which generally happens in 18 years. Or this could be the Rahu Ketu inversion, nodal opposition, which also happens like around 9.3 years, like around 9 years, I mean to say around 9 years, 9 years, 3 months. And like generally we say the age of the midlife transition, Saturn maturity around 36, Jupiter maturity. So marriage also, and also never forget this thing, that marriage can also activate Navamsha very strongly. So because once you get married and you are lucky enough to be married to a very fortunate partner, that also activates your bhagya, that also activates your destiny. So, and many people notice their priorities shift significantly after marriage because D9 becomes more active. That is a universal fact. Now, people say this thing that it only happens after marriage. I would not say this thing. D9 is always working. The force of the planets of D9 is always active. But yes, after marriage, the impact of it becomes very visible, very paramount. So now, friends, after this, so timing we have discussed, dispositor analysis. So like never stop at the node themselves, because you have to see their dispositor as well. So I mean to say Rahu's dispositor in the D1. So for example, because here I'm not talking about the zodiac sign placement, just the house placement. But even after that, is Rahu's dispositor is more strong in the D1 chart, or Rahu's dispositor is more strong in the D9 chart? You have to study it like that as well. So Rahu-Ketu dispositor in the D1, D9, because if the dispositor also exchange houses, signs, or create Parivartan Yoga, then the nodal flip becomes more powerful. So a strong dispositor can make the transition constructive, a weak or afflicted one can make it turbulent. Second thing is that, friends, you have to also give attention to the nakshatra as well. So I mean to say, the house exchange tells where the karmic reversal occurs. Like the nakshatra tells how it unfolds. So for example, we know that if Rahu, for example, is in Adra in the D1, native may pursue transformation through disruption. But the same Rahu in the Rohini nakshatra in D9 may ultimately seek stability, beauty, and nourishment. So the change is not only of life area, but of the psychological style as well. Along with that, friends, you also have to give attention to the Atmakaraka connection as well. We know that the Atmakaraka planet's placement in the D9 chart, which gives rise to the Karakamsa, is very important. So if either node connects with the Atmakarak or the Karakamsa Lagan, the flip often becomes one of the most defining themes of the incarnation. So again, understand this thing. Here we are talking about the transition U-turn, right? So that means if the Rahu-Ketu inversion, I mean to say the flip, has happened in the D9 and over there it is conjunct with the Atmakarak, then it becomes more defining. So the native may appear to reinvent themselves completely over time. But from a spiritual perspective, they are moving toward the soul's intended direction. Now, friends, when we talk about the planetary reinforcement, so the nodal flip is generally amplified when the same house axis is emphasized by the Saturn, indicating long-term karmic lessons. I mean to say, you have Rahu in the first, Ketu in the seventh. It is flipped in the D9. Now Ketu's in the first in the D9 and Rahu's in the seventh. But this Rahu is conjunct with exalted Saturn. So that is what I'm trying to say. So Jupiter aspects one of the nodes. It will bring wisdom and guidance. Um, the Lagna Lord or the Navamsha Lagna Lord joins the nodal axis. It it will actually make this reversal central to someone's identity. So friends, all what you have to do is that always look for the repeated symbolism across divisional charts rather than relying on a single indication. So, and I generally say this thing that like couple of mistakes which generally people make, like assuming the flip guarantees external reversal. Like sometimes this could be completely internal as well, right? Um, like outside, on the outside world, you are still being seen as like rich, wealthy, making good money, but deep inside, that craving for the money might have completely gone and been replaced by the search for the divine, search for the deeper meaning, like getting drifted towards the moksha. So but the world cannot see it because that changes and transition is happening internally within you. So, and also we say that ignoring the condition of the house lord and the dispositor, you still have to give attention to them. And a mistake which many times people do is that reading D9 only for marriage. Navamsa is a chart of dharma and maturation, not just merely your spouse. And predicting this timing without dasha and transit support, so you have to see that as well. So whenever these kind of things happen, everything will be perfectly aligned, not only your dasha or the transit running age, varshful of that year, and the event will trigger. um and yeah, friends, couple of things which we have discussed so far, like while analyzing any chart with a nodal flip, always ask this question to yourself if you're doing the analysis, like which houses does Rahu Ketu occupy in D1? Which houses do they occupy in D9? Is there a direct exchange of the house themes? What do the dispositors indicate? Which nakshatras are involved? These days, in some good app like Jyotish app, Jagannath Hora, you can even see the nakshatra of the planets in the divisional chart as well. It gives you more deeper insight. So And like, does the person's life story already reflect the three phases of pursuit, disillusionment, and the reorientation? Again, all of that is very important. And now comes the friends at the end. All I will just leave you with this philosophical insight on this, that see, Rahu teaches you through experience and Ketu teaches us through completion, right? So the nodal flip shows that the soul rarely ends where the personality expected to arrive. The ambition that once defined you becomes a lesson you outgrow. And the area you once neglected often becomes the place where you discover meaning. So, in that sense, the D1 reveals what the ego believes it wants, while the D9 reveals what the soul ultimately values. So, friends, on this, the final takeaway is that, like, when Rahu and Ketu exchange houses, themes between D1 and D9, the soul begins by pursuing the Rahu house of the natal chart. Life gradually exposes the limitation of that pursuit. The Navamsha reveals the deeper karmic destination. External success often gives way to internal fulfillment, and the exchange represents not contradiction but evolution. So, I would say that the nodal flip is therefore one of the clearest signature that the purpose of life is not merely to acquire experiences but to transform through them. So, friends, on this note, I will summarize this discussion. But yes, the way a lot of the like subscribers keep on asking about the Rahu Ketu inversion, a combination which gets formed in the transit. So that's very simple. Um, go by this dictum that when the transiting Rahu is over your birth natal Ketu, and Ketu is over your natal birth Rahu, that means it's inversion. This is the time when your past comes in the present and could alter or change your future. The difference is that when Rahu Ketu return is happening, that area of the life matures. Some sort of completion happens. But in the Rahu Ketu inversion, the native is filled with lot of the confusion, perplexing kind of situation. And yes, a lot is dependent on what kind of dasha person is running at that time and the evolutionary level of the soul, because that will decide, are you going to be played by the game which the universe and the cosmos is playing with you, or you are going to outgrow them. So yes, friends, on this note, I'm going to be culminating or summarizing this discussion. Once again, thanks a lot for watching this video.